What's going on, everybody? Welcome in. Another 5 minutes with Sean, maybe 10 sit-down edition, as we've done for most the month of May. Our May month of service wraps up on this, after this is going to be a Monday, Memorial Day here when this airs. So I'm looking to having a good time getting into the weekend. I thought we'd stop the month on a great note, talk about mental health. And the guest we have on today, as we joked in the pre-show, neither one of us is an expert in the mental health field, but we're people that live in society and have people that work for us or work with us or work around us. And the conversations, there's not enough of them. And that's really why we started this segment, now, geez, we're going on almost 2 years of having it. Is to let people know that it's okay to talk about it. It's okay to have those feelings and discuss them. And so the way I want to kick this off today with our guest, who, if you don't know him, you should check him out. He's all over LinkedIn. Robert Sebestyen. Robert, how are you, man?
Man, I'm doing, should I be honest?
Yes.
I mean, we're talking about mental health here. I have this sinking feeling.
Yes.
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. I'm a little, but I do have a sinking feeling. I think it is because I forgot that this chair actually sinks. So I need a new chair.
We got all kinds of technical snafus going on over there right now. Now at least we got a good mic, so we'll be good to hear. But if you slip, we can always pause it if we have to, man. So don't worry about that. All right. So Robert, we're going to kick the mental health day off the same way I like to with guests. And I'm going to ask you a simple question. What does mental health mean to you, either as an individual, as a business owner, sort of when you hear the term, what comes to mind?
Well, I mean, I work with people, so working with people and helping clients, helping customers. I mean, it's a daily struggle, I think. I see people carry a lot of weight. A lot of people carry a lot of weight. I think there's a lot of undiagnosed mental stuff out there. And a lot of it maybe doesn't need to be diagnosed. Maybe it's manageable by those of us who are maybe in charge of a group of people. And if we do a scheduled maintenance kind of thing. So I see a big need for scheduled maintenance. I see people crave attention. They crave to be listened to. And yeah, it's a very important thing. I see the morale kind of drop really quick if we skip some really important things. So we get so busy in business that we take care of business all the time and don't stop and actually talk a little bit and listen to each other. Some of our morale drops really quick. And I see people not just demotivated, but really just losing their joy for life itself.
Yeah, and when you see that in the workplace, right, Robert, that's that you could imagine then what happens outside of work, right? Maybe you don't see people as closely as you do when they're at work. And if you see that anxiety or that issue there where they're potentially trying to keep it in, right, trying to show as least amount as possible, but it still cracks through. Just imagine the struggles that go on when there aren't people around. Now, it's some of the stuff that you've posted in the past, about the dry cleaning business, sort of this idea, right, of some of the things that you've dealt with and customers. When we deal with mental health, the way that people are treated as employees by consumers, whether it's in a service drive, it's in a dry cleaner, wherever, do you think we put enough focus on that? Because I feel like it doesn't get talked about enough that the people on the front lines that are communicating directly with the consumer, they've got to deal with quite a bit of baggage from the consumer.
That's right. So I have a pretty broad perspective because even in the car business, I work in the inner city. So I worked for Kia in North Charleston, which was in the top 10 crime rate cities in the United States for a while. And then I worked on Hilton Head Island with Honda, and there we had really wealthy customers and all that. So even our dry clean stores, one of them is located in North Charleston, which has come a long way. North Charleston is an awesome place to be today. And then Mount Pleasant, where we have Maserati and Bentley owners and Tesla owners. So totally different perspectives. But in both stores, yes, you can see the customers. Certainly, most of them are aware that there's a shortage of help, and they're very, very kind, very understanding. So that's really cool. And then there's a few that are totally oblivious. They do not understand what happens when you have one person out for a whole month, or you're short 2 or 3 people in your service department for a whole month. So they just want what they want, and they could care less about your situation. And that to me is really hard to comprehend. I do understand the ones who are very kind and very understanding, very accommodating, as I'm talking about customers now. But on the other hand, I also don't want to take advantage of them being so accommodating. So we're not going to use our being short-staffed as an excuse for poor service. But the most important thing I see is management to be quick to back up the employee, to not allow the employee to be exposed to too much heat. Now, you're going to get a little bit of heat, and some of it is self-inflicted, and there we're talking about additional training that's needed. But I see that as owners or managers of a department of customer service employees, be quick to back up your employees. So it has to be trained, it has to be stated as one of your values that we don't want you to take a lot of heat. I want you to quickly deflect it and bring the de-escalate, but bring in help. Don't fight alone. And obviously it's important to stand on very good values as a business, to do the right thing quickly, do the right thing right away, always do the right thing. So that's obviously one of our values. And in everything I teach, the under my care training system that I have for service managers, for service advisors, is care so deeply that you don't argue with people when you know you probably messed up. Gather the facts, and when someone comes at you with on the vengeance, you say, hey, you came to the right place. You came to the right place. Thank you so much for bringing that complaint to our attention. We really appreciate people that bring us complaints anyways, because the other ones who don't bring us complaints, they're probably just going to leave us. They're complaining somewhere else. But I don't want the customer service staff to take the beating. So as soon as I notice, or as soon as a manager notices that you've got an employee who's taking a beating for nothing, you have to be quick and be kind of on standby and say, hold on, let's solve this. There is a solution here. Let's sit down and talk about it, and gently kind of intervene. And I think that's the best thing, to have a strategy where the employee knows that they're not in this fight alone, so they don't have to go home to their families all beat up.
Man, there is so much goodness right in there. I'm telling you what. So let's talk about the idea of you being able to see both sides, which I can really appreciate. My wife has a really innate ability to do this as well, where she can just put herself like you did. You're like, all right, I understand the customer who's had a bad day, and I understand this, but I also understand that's not going to be an excuse because I am short-staffed to run my business this way. And that's the dichotomy there that exists. I don't think a lot of people put that between the ears very often, right? So I don't think a lot of people get through that. So very, very impressed and love that approach about you. The quick to back up an employee thing is something that I've lived by my whole life. It's something that happened to me when I was a kid. I worked for my dad at his McDonald's, and somebody came at me all angry and such at McDonald's, asked for the manager, and Pops came over, and they didn't know that, obviously, and so they had thrown a cheeseburger at me. So I have a cheeseburger on my shirt. My dad just simply walks over and he's like, what are you doing with a cheeseburger on your shirt? To me first, to kind of de-escalate the situation. I'm like, I don't know. And he looked up at the customer, and the customer's like, it doesn't have anything I want on it. It's completely wrong. And my dad's like, so you threw it at him? He goes, that was your approach to fixing it? You could have just handed it to him. He could have handed you another burger that was fixed. The guy's like, yeah, now you'll do it. My dad's like, no, we won't. We're not going to do that. He's like, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you back the price of the cheeseburger. It's $1.06 or whatever it was. Here you go. And the guy's like, wait, I want a cheeseburger. He goes, you clearly didn't want one bad enough. You threw it at someone. So have a nice day and leave my store. And I thought to myself, for $1, for $1.05, here's Pop stepping up, doing something he doesn't have to do. And to me, right away, you were like, your boss has got your back. Now, did it happen to be my dad? And would any of manager done that? I don't know. I have no idea, but I know that that's who I worked for. That's what I started to learn from. So I completely appreciate that part of it. How often, Robert, would you say right now that we've got service managers that you run into that are initially out of the gate people who tell you or tell their advisors to turn heat? Because right when you said that is not, I've been in the car business 20 plus years. That is not a term I've heard a lot of people, forget just service managers. That's not even something I'd ever hear a sales manager say to somebody, which normally it's like, stay in it as long as you can, deal with it. And if you cannot, by all means, get anywhere, come find me. But don't do that unless you have to. How often do you think that's the reaction versus turn heat quickly?
Well, it's probably a 70-30, maybe not 80-20 rule, but maybe it's a 70-30. And of course, you'll hear more from the advisors who have a manager who doesn't step in, doesn't back them up. So it's probably 70% that don't do a great job at it, and about 30% who do. And you can see them right away. I mean, I talk to advisors who say, I'm staying at this place because of my manager. I could make more money closer to the house, but I drive an hour to work at this place because this guy's got my back. He treats us well. He cares for us. He eats with us. He does his schedule maintenance. And the best managers, they learn a little bit about how to take care of their people from how they take care of customers' cars. You do some schedule maintenance, preventative maintenance, which you do before issues appear, right? So you want to do that with your employees. Do some preventative maintenance, eat with them, sit down with them and do some coaching and ask a bunch of questions to reveal, is there something going on in their life that needs to be addressed? And with some of them, you got to do more preventive maintenance than with others. Depends, just like a vehicle, some you got to do more service than others. And do a multi-point inspection on your own employees. That's different from the preventive maintenance. Check that they don't have something going on that lend a listening ear, right? But yeah, some managers are really good at it. They really look out for their staff. I mean, there are managers who will tell the person, hey, go get your kid from school. Don't worry about it. I'll fill in for you, or come bring your kid here. We'll watch them. They don't even have a daycare at their dealership, which some dealerships do now, right? They have a daycare. But yeah, it's critical that you back your employees up.
Yeah, I like that you've touched on this now a couple of times, the scheduled maintenance, right? The preventative maintenance. And you touched on it earlier a little bit of the Under My Care program. Are those two linked together? That concept, does that flow together for you, the scheduled maintenance Under My Care, or are those just two separate thoughts that sound like they could potentially mix together?
Oh, no, they're absolutely related, because in the Under My Care, I learned a lot from this guy. I'm just going to throw his name out. I got to give him credit. If anybody thinks that I'm influenced by him, you're right. I'm influenced a lot by Jay Abraham, and he calls it the philosophy of preeminence. If you look in Webster's dictionary, the word client means someone who's under your care, but not only clients who are external customers, your own employees. Treat them like someone who is under your care, which means you got to look out for their growth and make sure they get the proper frequency, quality, and quantity of time from you, and combination of things that motivate them. So again, I'll repeat that. You got to give them the proper frequency, quality, and quantity of care. And again, with some, they need a little bit more, some need a little bit less. And you know which ones they are. You can look at them and you already know, as someone who works with people, that, hey, this person needs some care, needs some loving. They need a little bit of attention, and they're great people, but if you don't do that little, don't take that 3 minutes, 4 minutes, talk a little about the whatever problem they have, a single mom, or a single dad, or someone who's going something, they lost a family member, right? If you don't go through that, they're going to go through the day feeling really bad, and they're going to hurt themselves, because a lot of times when we have a bad attitude, and our bad attitude may be legitimate, right? You might have some stress going on in your life, but we got to be, as people who are in front of customers, like Broadway. I mean, it's showtime. It's showtime. So I understand we've got stuff, but you got to remove the person before they put themselves in a position to hurt themselves. And that happens a lot. Let's say I have something going on. My mom is going crazy on my dad, and I'm worried that my parents are getting divorced in their 80s, right? So I'm going to step out in front of the next customer with this bad attitude. And next thing you know, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. The customer's going to beat on me, and I'm going to think that the customer is really mean, but I actually didn't greet him right. Or if the customer came off a little bit the wrong way, and I failed to ignore that, and instead I'm also going to retaliate to the customer, right? And it all started because I came into work with a bad attitude because of something that's going on in my life, and my manager did not notice that, didn't do their MPI that morning. So it's critical that we kind of look at state of mind every day, especially now that our service advisors are taking quite a beating. And don't be the manager who says, hey, I'm out of the office today, or if this is such and such person shows up, I'm not here. That's not.
Yeah, that's never a good way to approach anyone or anything in business today. I mean, if you're going to work in a position of power, you should have that respect for the situation to be able to step in and do that. Have the respect for your people to be able to step in and do that. And again, like you talked about, I've got a 2020 vehicle and I've got a 2007 vehicle, right? Those vehicles have completely different maintenance programs. They have completely different schedules. And what I look at, what I care about, when I pull a 2020 out of the garage, I don't got to look behind it. I don't care if there's any, I know there's not gonna be anything there. The '07, you always got to double check. You don't find anything on the floor. You find something on the floor, you got to go find out what it is. And so, no, I really respect, I like the way that you say that. And the Showtime piece, that's how I grew up in the business, was no matter what is happening right now, was fine. But the second you step over that line and you greet a customer, if you're going to greet that customer, you have to either have the ability to put it away and be there and be in the moment and deal with it when you're done, or be so good at hiding it that no one even notices you're dealing with it, right? And that's how we were raised. In the Chicago car business, we didn't sit around and we did not have scheduled maintenance discussions, dude. Okay. I mean, 1998, 1999, Chicago car business as a rookie, people didn't talk to you in general, let alone about your mental health. So it's something that, now I hope that people take advantage of it in dealerships. Robert, do you see that there are more communication? There is a better understanding that people do need to be talking about this at a store level with the folks that you see and the people you deal with?
Oh, certainly. There's a lot more awareness. I mean, obviously, times are changing, and just because of dealing with different generations, there's this different attitudes towards the generation. But a lot of that is the wrong assumption. That's assuming that you have to be maybe softer with a generation. Well, if you're thinking softer, meaning not being intimidating, like we used to be back in the 90s and 80s, like, remember, I was a rookie salesman in a Green Pea. I was intimidated by the managers. I mean, those guys were walking around like they were little dictators. They're like, get off your ass, get on the glass. Come on, man.
And sitting up in those towers didn't help, right, man? The literal, it wasn't just a figurative discussion. It was like the tower, it was meant that way. It was meant for us to walk up and barely be able to put our paper on top, to get our pencil. And it was just, I don't know. And now you see it like open air, glass offices, and everybody can see everybody. And we still play too much of the office game anyways, but still, sorry. So yeah, your point is that if you consider it soft to not intimidate people, then yeah, I guess we're asking you to be soft, but instead I'm asking you to not be an asshole and intimidate people and actually work with them through the ability of communication, which we should have all learned by now is easier than being an asshole.
Well, and a lot of times as managers, we don't do our jobs. We expect our people to do their jobs, to do those multi-point inspection. I'm just going to go back to the multi-point inspection quite a bit, and to follow process. But as managers, there are professional processes that we should follow as we grow our people, as we deal with our people, and we don't. And when you don't, the next thing you know, a few things go sideways, and you didn't do your checklist, you didn't hold your people accountable, didn't challenge them to certain activities, because let's face it, people need leadership. Without leadership, people get lost. I mean, even the best people, salespeople, whether it's salespeople or service advisors, doesn't matter. It's variable, fixed ops, technicians. If you don't hold them accountable, 80% of people will deviate from good processes. So then you don't hold your people accountable, you don't challenge them. And next thing you're angry that things didn't happen. And I've seen this in a dealership where the sales managers came out in front of everybody, chewed everybody's behind out, like he was the king. And these are just little peons and worthless pieces of crap instead of the valuable human beings who they are. Now, they did mess up. They had someone sleep in a car overnight because they didn't lock the cars up. But still, the attitude and the show that this man, and by the way, to add to that, the guy was about 6'5" and about 300 pounds, so a towering presence.
Yeah.
And everybody was thinking, wow, what's going on here? How can you work on this tyrant? But anyways,
that's the kind of stuff that, I mean, I get it. Mistakes happen, right? And sometimes nothing you can do about it. It depends on what areas you work in. Everybody, lock the cars, do this, do that. We make mistakes as human beings. I think what I keep coming back to for you, though, is the multi-point inspection. I love how the Under My Care really kind of twists it all together with mental health without even really talking about it. Like here, you kicked our conversation off before we came on and said you weren't an expert. Well, it turns out you just learned like a behind the scenes expert, because the approach here is driven by mental health. As I see it from the outside looking in, someone becoming more familiar with it than they were before they talked to you today. So to me, I start looking at the MPI. I say to myself, all right, well, I can do a multi-point inspection probably pretty quickly if I figure out exactly what those key elements are to me, right? So for me, it's, do I have the energy that I normally have? Because I'm someone who runs pretty high. And so if I wake up in a day and I don't have that, I know there's something else dragging on me, like whether, like you're dragging anchor, where you're just like, I can't get all I can get. That's one thing for me. So I like that. And I'm going to try and work on that. But Robert, as you work through this, what are you hearing from the younger generation of car enthusiasts, whether it's mechanics, whether it's techs, whatever it is, people in our business who are younger? How do they adapt to these sort of conversations differently than maybe someone, I'm 40, so maybe someone, north of me?
Well, so I mean, the younger generation, first of all, doesn't have a lot of reasons to come in, because the people that are in the industry tell them not to come in. And then a lot of them that are in, if you look at their conversations, and especially if you're going to be in a group where there's no censorship online, there's some forums where there's a lot of service advisors in, and they're talking about how to get out. They want to get out. They're like, man, what do you find? The only reason they stay in is the money, because at the educational level, to be a service advisor, for example, you cannot make that money anywhere else. You could probably make it in sales, and actually you'd make more in sales, but then they don't want to work that schedule, and they're scared of the in service. Correct. They call it fixed ops for a reason, because in reality, it's not that difficult. If you're consistent at presenting all the needs of the vehicle and preventive maintenance, people are going to buy. But a lot more people come to you, so you have a lot more opportunity. That's why sales can make more money than a service advisor, because it's harder. You do have to work harder to collect customers in sales, but they're open. The thing is, it's up to the manager to sit down, and I just completed a week ago or so this book, The Coaching Habit. And in this book, the Coaching Habit, there's I think it's 7 questions. And it doesn't matter if you take these questions, you take other questions. Now, the MPI on an individual, on a person, cannot be as quick as on a car. You actually have to, when you look at one of the lines and you ask the question, what's on your mind? The person says, nothing. Okay, check, we're done. Okay, all right, there's nothing on his mind. We're done here. Get out of here. Yeah. No, the next question is, and what else? They'll tell you, well, I mean, a hamburger would be nice right there. I'm thinking about a hamburger because I'm hungry, right? And you say, all right, well, let's go get a hamburger. And then what else is going on with you? And then they'll tell you something else. I mean, things are kind of okay. And my girlfriend's kind of bothering me right now. She stole my black sweater and moved out of the apartment. And I said, okay, well, what else? I mean, tell me. And then next thing you know, the person starts opening up, and they'll tell you all kinds of stuff. And now, obviously, there's things that you have to say, okay, well, I appreciate you sharing, and I'm with you. I want to support you every way I can. But that really require higher level professional help. And it's good to recognize that. I mean, I literally had a technician whose girlfriend of 7 years left him. He spun into a downward spiral, into deep depression, that it took him 2 months to come out. And it was the entire team that actually called, and I called, and all of us called him. He moved away. He moved back home from Charleston, South Carolina, to the upstate, to Rock Hill. And all of us rallied around him, and I said, hey, man, come be miserable with us. If you're going to be miserable anyways, we can't guarantee that you're not going to be miserable. But at least you're going to be surrounded by friends. And by then, we had an awesome team. And I lucked out, by the way. I cannot take credit for this. I lucked out because my desk, literally my service manager desk, was right next to the first bay in the shop. And it was an open shop. So it was 110 degrees. I was sweating with them. I was doing all my paperwork out there. And so I lucked out. But by having that closeness to them, I became kind of part of them. But at the same time, I was still the manager. So I did my job as a manager. But guess what? So this guy moved back down, he's still miserable. but he's turning 55 hours a week. He's doing really good. He was my top performer, and I lost him to this issue of his girlfriend breaking up with him. It was really like a marriage. They were living together for 7 years at that point. So a year went by, and then he met the sister of one of the service advisors. They got married, and she's a PhD. So technician marries a PhD in early childhood psychology, and now they have 2 kids, and really they're living a good life. But that's one of my best stories, where these guys, everybody just rallied around a team member, a teammate. It's like no technician left behind. So they were like, David, come on, man, we love you, come back.
Man, I love that. You don't hear enough of that. You don't hear enough of people really pulling together for someone. It doesn't surprise me necessarily in the car business, because I feel like as it goes, misery does love company. So I think to that extent, we all know what each other deals with to not every day, not every dealership, but a lot of us have dealt with or are dealing with some of the same things. And the sales department, all the years of time I've spent up there, and now the last couple of years diving in with folks like yourself, Joe Chambers, SDL, those guys really getting into the service world, learning more. It's the same thing. It's all the same discussions that we've been having up front that you're having in back. And no one, I don't think enough, I'm going to take a lot of heat for this because I got a lot of friends who are GMs, but I don't think enough GMs are able to pull both together. I think it's a really special task. I think most people focus on the front half. I've met some. I've met one recently, man, runs a huge Kia store out in Arizona. Dude is legit on both halves of his store, talks about both halves of his store the exact same way, seamlessly in discussion. Impressed me because I haven't run into a lot of dudes that do that. And I think it's important that we do that. You know, people, to me, that's a story of success right there for that dealership. That dealership should share that story of success, maybe not directly, maybe indirectly, letting other people know that this is a place you want to work because these are the people who work here. Yep. That's the kind of atmosphere and attitude that we create, that we work on. And that's exciting to think about dealership cultures like that. And I want to hear more of that, as I'm sure you do, Robert, and I want to have more people get there. But let me ask you, how do we get, if we're at 70-30, right? Your number, my number is probably, it's probably the same thing. How do we get 60-40, 50-50? How do we get better at that part of it?
So look, I mean, I'm probably going to get some heat for this because a lot of people, we want our employees to follow process, but as managers, we fly by the seat of our pants. And the thing is, there's nothing wrong with a checklist, you know, so that you don't forget the things that matter. So you got to put yourself periodic reminders. As a GM, you got to ask your department managers, or if you're a fixed ops director over several stores, ask each manager, hey, tell me about every one of your guys and tell me what you know about them. Tell me, do you know where they were born? Do you know what's their hobby? Do you know what they're into? And that'll tell you. Dale Carnegie teaches, there's a leadership course for managers where they talk about the interview. So you look inside the person. It's only 15 minutes. It's not long, but where you find out about each one of your employees. And this ideally can be done during onboarding. But you know what? Hey, if you didn't do any onboarding with your previous hires, re-onboard them. You know, I have a friend who wrote a book, Dr. Troy Hall, Cohesion Culture. I highly recommend it. And him and another guy here in Charleston, South Carolina, they do a boot camp for team building. And they launched this program for re-onboarding, to re-onboard all of your employees. You know, learn how to onboard your employees, tell them the company culture, the company, what the company stands for. You have people that have worked there for 5 years. They probably don't know what the company stands for, how it got started. And, you know, I know one dealer who at this point, I asked him, I said, I know at one point I figured out their income was about $1.5 million a month. Every building paid for, 13 buildings paid for, no loans, no debt. And I said, what drives you? I said, what drives you? And he said, nothing else than seeing people prosper. Nothing else than seeing a guy come from car wash to loop tech, to technician, to service advisor, whatever. And a lot of them have become GMs. They partnered and, well, not a lot of them, a couple of them, but a lot of them have become very, very successful, whether in the car business or eventually they moved on to something else. But he said nothing else than seeing these people. So he installed a very good apprenticeship program in his dealership for his technicians to give them a path to move forward. So the interview is very important. I would make sure I check that my managers are doing the interview, that we care for the heart, for the soul of our employees, not to get deep into this, because there's an area you cannot go. We're not psychologists and psychiatrists, whichever one is not prescribing medication, right?
Well, I mean, look, I'm neither. So
we're neither.
We're neither. Yeah, I'm neither.
So we're not going to ask our managers to be all that, but a manager that wants to lead a great staff, there's no other way. So even a manager might say, well, you know what, I'm not that person. I'm a guy that I'm more introverted. Yeah, that's all right. You can be introverted, but you can still ask some questions. Make sure to sit down with your people and show them that you care.
Yeah, and so this is, again, here we go, right, with the blend back from the front of the house to the back of the house, the sales and service department. So I'm sitting here thinking about how much the road to the sale includes the interview, right? And it's all it's about. But now you got me thinking about how these managers, right, they want me to follow the interview process, but no one ever interviewed me, man. My managers never came to me and said, well, what's up with you? What's that? Now, granted, I wear it, I wear it on the sleeve. So not a lot of people got to guess where I'm at on a topic or where I am with my day. For the most part, I would say, I think most people who run into me in my career would say, yeah, Sean, it wasn't like I had to guess. I would think, but one of the guys I worked for, last guy I worked for, he was taking over his family's business. You know how it is. And he and I were about the same age, and I had been in retail much longer than he had. And he was just coming out of college, and, we butted heads and we butted heads, but we did it in what he called the lot walk, because he wasn't going to do it in front of everybody else. But he knew, because he knew if he said something to me in the middle of the showroom that I was liable to turn around and go, what did you say? Well, let's do this right here. And that was never his approach. So he was always, let's go on the lot walk. And they would mostly be civil, but you could get hot, you could get fired up. And then the second we got done talking about it and then we hit the lap to come back to the front of the dealership, it was over. It was over. And he had said his piece, I had said mine, and that was it. And that was how we did it. Now he runs a completely different dealership group than when I left him. And he does a lot of what you're talking about. Recently had an employee who lost his dad, right? Young employee lost his dad. And I just recently caught up with the employee the other day, and I said, how are things, man? And he said, dude, I got to tell you, I couldn't have done it without this family. And I said, well, your family stuck together. He goes, no, the dealership, man. And this is a kid his store was bought recently by my buddy's store. So he's not even that old into the group, a couple of years. And that's how he feels. So that to me really sells it, Robert. I think that, I don't know about you, but you may mention someone earlier who drives further because of the person who works there. I would be that person too. How about yourself?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's tough when you cringe in the morning before you go to work, and it's just I don't want to be there, right? Now that used to be me, but because I was always late when I started out selling, I was always 10 minutes late, and they still tolerated me.
Sure.
But if you
sure you didn't, that wasn't in Chicago, Robert, because that would not have flown, man. That does not. It was. I learned punctuality quickly in the car business, man.
Well, I had to learn it, but no, it's really tough to go. I worked for a boss like that. The guy was screaming at me. I was in a factory in Chicago, actually, because I am from
nice
in the U.S. I started out in Chicago. I worked for Boston Continental, and this guy, I mean, he would turn red in his face, screaming if you did something wrong, and I was like, dude, just tell me how to make it better. How can I please your majesty? But yeah, and I quit. I ended up quitting, and also they did some stuff that was another thing. They changed the pay plan. I was doing some contracting work for them at home, and they changed the rate without telling me. They just started paying me a different rate without any notice. So I was like, okay, well, that doesn't work. It goes hand in hand with you screaming and also being dishonest, and that's not going to work. And I had such high hopes in the American ideal and American dream. In America, people do business on a handshake, and you can trust the other person. I said, no, I'm not going to put up with that.
We all got to learn it the hard way, and you couldn't have learned it in a better city and probably quicker than you did. That's for sure. Look, man, you've been really gracious with your time. I really, really appreciate it. I want to sort of wrap this up and take us down this road a little bit. The idea of the checklist, is that have to do with the whole laminate stuff? I always mean to ask you about, is it a bit? Is it a thing? Like, should I be doing it? My wife has a laminator, you know what I'm saying? So I refer to you as laminate man sometimes around my house when my wife is like, what did he say? I'm like, so tell me, man, what is up with the laminates?
That's just, I was having fun with that, but in the end, okay, all right, it can be a metaphor for things that are worth carving in stone, things that, at least for a period of time, you say, okay, this is what we stand for. Or you say, well, I happen to have a laminated sheet here. You see, this is a,
yes,
this is actually one I use as a business card. If I visit a dealership, it has a QR code at the bottom. But this is a gift. I said, this is my gift to you, as a complete repair order checklist, and you can use a dry erase marker.
Yeah, right there with the check marks right on there. Boom, done. No, seriously. So we're working on helping dealers a lot now with social media and understanding the data and really diving into like how to post on social and go into your service department. Don't be afraid to show somebody doing something and it's all good, all these things. And so we're talking about these checklists for dealers. And I was joking with one of the partners saying, hey guys, let's just laminate it. I've seen this shit. I know it works. I've seen it online. So why don't we just laminate it so they have like the checklist of the post types that we're talking about and the information, the do's and don'ts. Like, let's do it. And I don't think anyone took me seriously in that discussion, Robert. For whatever reason, I don't know if I was having too much fun, but my guys did not take me seriously.
That's a problem. There's a guy who wrote the Checklist Manifesto. He's a doctor. And I was driving down the highway one day, and would you believe that I was crying, literally bawling, listening to a book about a checklist? And I was actually laughing at myself. I said, if I tell anybody I actually was crying, listening to a book about a checklist. Well, what happened? He was doing a surgery that he's done 1,000,000 times, and he made the wrong cut. And he was about to lose this patient. And he's talking about it. He described it in the book. How the patient was about to die. And then a nurse said, and he said how much blood supply he needed. And one of the nurses that had performed a checklist, even though he never needed blood for this surgery, because of the checklist, she had a large supply of blood ready. And they used the blood, the man survived. They got to talk about it. The guy forgave him because he had to tell him and his family that they almost lost him. He had to go into ICU a little longer than normal. And it was a really bad situation, but the patient survived, and it was because of a checklist. But this doctor used this to reduce infection rates in hospitals throughout the country. In Detroit and hospitals that had a really high infection rate, they were losing patients, not because of the illness that they came in for, but because of infections. So they started using a checklist in the OR, because believe it or not every doctor washes their hands. If you've ever walked out of a bathroom and you see how many guys walk out without washing their hands, and you realize we got a problem. But
that is, yeah, all right. So that makes sense that you were crying, all right? So let me just go ahead and back that up, because here you and I were laughing into that little segment right there, and then you drop that on me, and it's like, well, all right. I mean, of course, I'd probably be crying too if I was listening to a manifesto about checklists, and all of a sudden, guys, like, yeah, let me tell you why I believe in them, and you're just like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. So, and again, without it being that extreme, right? I think obviously always good to have the higher end of craziness down to the regular end of your business card, as you put it. And just so people know, this wasn't like a setup thing. That dude just has that laying within his arm's reach. He didn't know I was going to talk to him about it. He didn't have any idea it was going to come up. It's just within arm's reach is where it is. And there are others as well.
This is another business card that it has QR codes that lead people to certain videos that I've done about different topics. So I say, hey, here, get some videos when you need your guys to. One of them says connect that hello. The other one, do the right thing quickly. The other one, complete care. The other one, how to handle your price is high objection. The other one, can I count on you? Can I count on you?
Interesting.
but yeah, the checklist is not rigid, because some people would think, oh man, a checklist is rigid. No. Add, if you want to add 3 questions at the end and say, what else have we not thought about? What else? What are some other things that could affect this situation that we have not thought about? But pilots know it. And I have a client who's a pilot, and a bunch of retired pilots from the Air Force formed a company. It's called Check Six. And their business is, if you look at check6.com, they say they accelerate human performance, and they create checklists for industrial situations where life is at stake. You cannot do these jobs. People die on the job when they skip certain things on the checklist. As simple as, did you tie the Velcro on your sleeve before you walked into this particular environment? Because that sleeve can get caught in a piece of equipment. And I have another friend who's a loss prevention director for a huge company. And his goal, he's always posted on LinkedIn of how many days they have gone without accident. His goal is to send these people home to their families without injuries. So checklists save lives, but there are environments where we think we can do things without them, and it's okay. But if you ever try to get paid on a deal and you were missing the steps, a checklist is really good. Yeah. But on the other hand, there are things that you should say on the lot as a salesperson. It's almost like having your checklist. It probably helps if you have it in your pocket. Say, hey, make sure you show them that really expensive piece. Like, one of the things is when you're selling a car, you would say they're looking at this, and they say, at the fully loaded model. And you say, oh, by the way, here's the other model. This one's $15,000 less, without the leather, without the sunroof, without the lane change, without the self-assist driving. And then you tell them that. And why would you say that? Because you get inside the office and they say, hey, so I'll pay you $10,000 less for this vehicle, right? But if you did that out on the lot and say, hey, remember I showed you that car out there? That's the $10,000 less model.
That's it.
Again, I mean, they're all checklists. We don't have to call them checklists. You can find a sexier name for it. But if you don't have a good process, and by the way, when you do a phone up, right? A phone up, depending on what the person says, you're going to go to a different answer.
This way or the A or B, right? Split in the road. Where do we go now? If this, then this. How do we work through it? I think it's a really important part of it. I'm someone who tries to do a really good job with mental checklists. I'm not a good writer outer checklist. My business partner is crazy about it. He's like, everything he does a lot of like day hiking and camping like that. So he's got to have everything in his pack he needs for like 3 days. And I don't do that. I will go outside and hike for 10 miles, but I'm definitely coming home and I'm definitely sleeping in my own bed. So I don't need too much of a checklist to get myself out the door. Plus, I've been noticing myself just setting up things, certainly, right? So I like set up my kayak stuff in a certain spot, so I just know it's all there, or the hike stuff or the bike stuff, whatever it is, this time of year. So, Robert, as we do wrap this up, I want to ask you, when you think about mental health and your employees, do you think the MPI or do you think the interview, or both, how do we simplify? What's the easiest route we can give to managers right now as they watch the end of this show? We give them one takeaway. What would it be to deliver a better situation with their employees of checking in?
I think the interview would be first.
Okay.
Definitely the interview. And then make it periodic. You've got to make it a point, because a lot of employees crave your attention, and then some don't, but those probably need your attention the most, or just as much. The ones who might hate you. I had one tech that he totally hated authority, every figure of authority. And he said, I'd take a day off. I'm feeling bad. I'd go to the doctor, but that jerk up front won't let me go. Well, I was the jerk up front. So I happened to be standing around the corner, and I said, Jason, hey, come on, let's talk about this. I apologize. I haven't spent time with you and all that. What's going on, man? And I said, just ask the jerk. He'll let you off. But, we're still friends today. Now it's 15 years later. But I didn't know all that. And I was not a great manager at first, and not a great listener. In fact, I would talk about people behind their back. I mean, I'm confessing here on your show. that sometimes I would complain to everybody about a person instead of talking to them and listening to their point of view. And I had to repent of that, because that doesn't do wonders for your operation when you're talking to a service advisor about a technician and the service advisor is friends with them and say, hey, you know what, this manager is talking shit about you. That just doesn't work. And, I apologize. If you're watching this video, man, I'm sorry for ever doing that. I was a total jerk. You're right.
That's good, man. Hey, that's the kind of honesty we're talking about, though. That's how you get mental health honesty. I think it's a big part of it. And when you guys, you talk about the interview, I would add to this, don't give up. Like Robert stated earlier, you ask someone how they're doing, they say fine. Don't just turn around and accept fine. Peel back the onion. Ask an additional follow-up question. Treat it like you would a family member. Really start to go and look. And to Robert's point, I'm 40 now. I was running stores when I was 25. I wouldn't work for me then, now. Not that version of myself. I would definitely not work for myself. I would now. Now I think I'm good with all that stuff. But back then, I was about running dealerships. It's about profit. That's how I was paid. That's what made sense. That's how the bills. So that was the ultimate focus. I really decentered myself to people. I actually had people in my notebooks. The board in my office didn't have salesmen's names. It just had numbers. And the managers knew who the numbers were related to. So they could just write the data in, and I could just say, I don't know who salesman 4 is, but I'm tired of seeing this metric. So if they don't improve, I'm going to fire them. So go figure out who number 4 is and go deal with that person. And it was bad of me, but I was really so focused on data and really dissecting it. And I think a lot of guys on SDL talk about it. You can't just have data. You have to have the human element. You have to have that sort of ongoing relationship. So, man, I really appreciate you making the time, Robert. You are an incredible guy. You're so insightful. If folks want to check out more about you and what you do, Robert, where can they do that?
The easiest one is gravitationalbusiness@gmail.com or robert@gravitationalbusiness.com, or just DM me, really. That's probably the easiest one. DM me on LinkedIn.
All over LinkedIn, Robert is. He is absolutely on it. He posts daily. He is one of those guys that can get it done. I am not, as you all know, but we really appreciate it. And thank you so much, as this does air on the Memorial Day weekend. Thank you to all of our armed services for all that you do everywhere that you do it. We appreciate you. Thank you so much.
We really do.
I was just saying, Robert, anything you'd like to add to the to that, please do.
And we've got a part-time employee, more of a friend, but she offered to help us out. And I just posted a picture of her, and she's getting activated. And so, we really appreciate what you guys and your families have done on Memorial Day. We remember those who have sacrificed for this country. And I come from Romania. I always credited all the heroes of this country for really doing their part for saving us from the tyranny of communism when I was growing up there. So I really appreciate everything you guys are doing. And just much love to all the service member families.
Thank you so much, Robert. Thank you all for all that you do in the armed forces. And thank you all for watching this week. We really appreciate this Mental Health Monday. Tune in June. I'll be back in the saddle driving solo. Got a couple of ideas I want to drop on folks throughout the month of June. We'll have some fun. Thank you all very much, and we'll see you again next week.
Thank you.